Hello, you're watching the TelecomTV Summit on Telcos and Public Cloud and our panel discussion on whether or not hybrid cloud is still the optimum strategy for telcos. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content for TelecomTV. So, is using a mix of public and private cloud the best approach to take? And how should a telco cope with these challenges and create a best-of-breed solution? With the help of today's guests, we're going to address some of the key issues that arise from TelecomTV's ongoing editorial coverage of the public cloud. And joining us on the programme today are Ahmed Zaidi, who is Telco Cloud NFV 5G Core Architect at Orange, Danielle Royston, Founder and CEO of Telco DR, Fatih, who is Chief Architect, Telco Partner Solutions at Red Hat, Heather Kirksey, VP Ecosystem and Community for LF Networking, and Grant Lenahan, who is Partner and Principal Analyst with Appledore Research. Hello everyone, good to see you all. Thanks so much for taking part in our discussion today. For the first question, Grant, I'd like to start by asking you, are telcos fundamentally no different from enterprises when it comes to cloud use? In which case, should we expect to see telcos following similar cloud approaches to what enterprises have done?
That's a great question, Guy. I'd like to actually answer two sides of it to give a really balanced picture of what's going on. I think the first thing we all need to keep in mind is that telcos are very conservative, and they've learned very well over their history that being careful and step-by-step in operations is essential to their long-term future. That makes change very difficult. And I think too often telcos look at new technologies, new methods, the way other industries operate, and say, well, that's good for them, but that's not good for us because we're different. And this is the classic, it's different this time. And in many cases, the answer is, no, it's not. In fact, we published a piece about 3 years ago called The Revolution is Postponed, a little bit tongue-in-cheek on this. But when you dig below that, there are some really fundamental differences between telcos and other industries, because they're not in the business of fundamentally operating workloads that are CPU intensive and can be accessed by, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people. They are in the right-of-way, spectrum, transport, move bits from place to place business. And this means that proximity is incredibly important. You need workloads running in a particular place to move that traffic. Yes, there are workloads that can be shared, that can be put in a major data center, but many are going to need to come into near edge or far edge locations, and some actually need to be in a very specific place, like a manhole or very near a cell site. So there are real differences that they need to deal with, and yet we believe they're manageable, and we believe there's a lot of great technology and experience to come out of the public cloud that they can adapt and get economies of scale and lots of other benefits as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Grant. Let me first of all go across to Danielle, and then we're going to come to Fatih. But Danielle, how do you see this? Do you see telcos as being like a unique use case? Do you see them following a similar practice and approaches that other enterprises have followed?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree a little bit with Grant. I think it's time to kind of take off the shackles and move a little bit faster. Telco needs to change. All these other players are coming in and stealing, the opportunity that telcos have to increase their ARPU. If you look over the last probably 10, 15 years, ARPU continues to decrease, and they're going to have to move a little bit faster to compete. I agree with Grant in that, there are some workloads that need to be, at the edge and latency super fast. I think there's things like wavelength and outposts and some elements from the public cloud that you can put there. But it's time to act with speed. Speed really does matter, and it matters with subscribers. And we've seen that through the pandemic. The companies that have been able to pivot and provide an excellent customer experience by putting elements of self-service into their mobile apps into AI bots that answer customer support problems much more quickly. It's time for telco. I mean, again, I agree on the network. You got to move bits from place to place, and you got to think those things through. But there's a whole swath of workloads inside that telco that need to get up into the public cloud, using public cloud software, innovating much more quickly, and it's time to start copying some of these other companies and moving with speed. So I say, yeah, copy the other industries and move to the public cloud.
Okay, Danielle, thanks very much for that. Fatih, let's come across to you. You know, it's all about moving workloads, isn't it? But are telcos the same as other enterprises? Should we see telcos, expect to see telcos following a similar path?
First thing, as an ex-Verizon distinguished engineer, I would like to say that we are oversimplifying telco. Telco is not a single enterprise. Telco encompasses multiple enterprises under its wings. There's one part for the communication services, one for media and entertainment, as well as IT, as well as marketing, as well as brick and mortar. So it is multiple enterprises under one name. It's just like Alphabet having Google, YouTube, and all that. It's similar. That's why when we are talking about no different from enterprises, okay, which enterprises are we comparing against which enterprise inside a telco? So for that purpose, for example, marketing department and customer relations or customer support may leverage heavy data-intensive applications, may go one particular cloud. Telecommunication services that are latency intensive need to spread around with low cost, may go another approach with hybrid. So my point in here, we shall think a little bit inside the box rather than outside the box and see what part of the telco organization or portfolio is suitable with what cloud approach.
Thanks, Fatih. You know, it's a good point as well, because we are very critical sometimes of telcos regarding enterprises as just being silos and very similar, whereas there's a lot of differences within enterprises. Heather, let's come across to you for some extra thoughts here.
Yeah, well, and it sort of follows on what you were just saying, Guy, is, you know, we tend to ask ourselves as in the telecom world, you know, are we learning what we can from enterprise? And what I've been seeing recently is enterprise wanting to learn from telco. You know, in some of our Linux Foundation projects, we're seeing, you know, the hyperscalers, Azure and Google and AWS getting really involved in networking projects. We're seeing, you know, Walmart and the US government coming to sort of some of the telecom projects going, network is now, you know, sort of our limitation. We need networking to be more agile and faster, and to, you know, adopt some of the technology approaches y'all have been doing with network to satisfy our use cases. So, you know, there's a part of me that almost wants to turn that question around, and instead of as telecoms, you know, are we going to become more like enterprise, and, you know, maybe ask the extent to which enterprises are becoming more telecom-like, as all of the services are more and more dependent on high-grade connectivity amongst their users. And so, I mean, I think it's a different framing, but I think basically folks are coming together, but it's not that we need to learn entirely from others. We have a lot to teach each other.
Yeah, that's good to hear as well, Heather. And I think one of the outcomes of this particular question is, you know, it's very dangerous to generalize too much. We're going to be careful and cautious there. Well, let's move on to our next question. And Ahmed, I'd like to put this to you first. Why should the option of a hybrid cloud approach be of interest to telcos? What unique capabilities does a hybrid approach offer?
Yes, so at least the hybrid cloud from these operators or telco companies is something that we need to be there. Because first, let's say we need at least to propose and to deliver some high performance, also to latencies, the very low latencies, and also to, let's say, to have some security equipment and to all the flow that are going through the hybrid cloud. That means from the public to the private, let's say, need to be secure. So that's mean for us, for the telco or telecom companies, is something that we should go, and we need to be there, let's say, as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Ahmed. Grant, What are you seeing from the research that you conduct? Why is a hybrid cloud of interest?
To begin answering that question, I want to go back and give Fatih his due in bringing up the huge point that I neglected to bring up in my initial answer, which is that there is a huge variety of workloads and applications and services within telcos. And some of them look very much like other enterprise and even, hyperscaler applications, and can and should move to the public cloud. And I think some of the points we had earlier, that telcos are conservative, they are slow moving, and where it makes sense, they need to take advantage of technologies that others have really perfected and move much more quickly, is also true. But then we need to get back to the fact, that I mentioned earlier, that there are location dependencies, there are latency dependencies. There are a number of things that say that some telco workloads will look substantially different. And therefore, I think if you want both economic optimization and practical delivery capabilities, you are going to need a variety of clouds, some on-prem, some near-prem, some wherever they can run the cheapest and the most efficiently. And that means hybrid. I think you also, the more you can distribute things around without making the complexity so high that it becomes a problem, the more resiliency and backup you have, right? The public cloud has essentially in its stochastic algorithms nearly infinite bandwidth and the ability to, recover and move workloads for almost anything. So taking advantage of that when it doesn't need to be in the access near a cell site is tremendously valuable. So I think it's going to be very important for telcos to think not about one versus the other, but what's the combination that really gets me to the answer.
Thank you, Grant. And Fatih, does the attraction of the hybrid cloud approach come back to the comments you made earlier about the fact that telcos are comprised of different businesses?
It's true. I wouldn't only call hybrid cloud, I would call it hybrid multi-cloud, I think is really essential and I would say accelerator for telco businesses as well as telco internal businesses as well. And what we are seeing in the market and kind of a mind shift as well, it started like consuming cloud from bottom up, from infrastructure as a service and then platform as a service and then software as a service. And now we are seeing more on top to bottom with the software as a service to be used as much as possible in telco applications and application architectures to lower time to market, to lower the cost, as well as lower the necessary complex talent dependency. So you got to remember, whatever we're bringing to market as a software business, it has to be backed by certain talent as an application developer or operations talent, as well as taking care of all the logistics. So telco realize that, okay, using software as a service, if we can, could be a good start point for addressing new requirements and new opportunities in the field. So that's why hybrid multi-cloud will enable you to consume software as a service as well as platform as a service across different hyperscalers, as well as your own premise ones that you already paid for. That's a good enabler in my humble view.
Thank you, Fatih. Danielle, moving on, wouldn't the most sensible economic approach perhaps would be to just go all in with public cloud, avoid any duplicating workloads and operations, avoid the need for having different skill sets in the company, just go all in?
Yeah, I mean, I am the all-in public cloud girl. I'm always, sort of advocating that as an idea. But I think let's take a step back and why use hybrid cloud? And like Fatih said, there's a lot of different workloads inside the telco, lots of different businesses. I think that was a really excellent point. When you're planning your move to any of these clouds, right? I think you look at the workloads inside that telco, and you're going to start to categorize them. Right? Which ones are optimal to be on the public cloud? Which ones are going to need to remain on premise because of, latency or whatever reason that might be? Which ones are easy to move and which ones are more difficult? I think hybrid cloud kind of keeps you in this middle ground. And I kind of think of it as a tethered hot air balloon. right? Like a hot air balloon is best when it's free and floating away, and not really useful when it's tethered. And a hybrid cloud sort of ties you to the ground, right? You're now forced to pick technologies that are available in both places. And what makes that hot air balloon really fly and soar is being able to use all the software that's available at the public cloud that's not available on premise, right? It's not a matter of where the workload is running, but a matter how that application is designed. And I think to jump on Fatih's point about the complexity of the talent that you need, right? And being able to assemble Lego pieces that are available only in the public cloud much more quickly and with a lower skill level is a key enabler back to what I'm talking about in terms of enabling telcos to move much more quickly. So I think going all in is obviously, don't use hybrid as a stepping stone. I think that just delays it, makes it cost a lot more money. If you can target that workload for the final destination to public cloud, move it there first, move it there very quickly. If it's going to stay on premise, then just leave it. But don't tether your hot air balloon, right? Set it free and maximize the public cloud. It's not just about cost savings. It's about innovation speed. And I think that's something that telcos really need. And so that's why I'm a big proponent of the public cloud.
Well, as we would expect you to be, Danielle, thanks very much for those comments. And Grant, just following Danielle's analogy there, we all want telcos to soar. That's what we're here for. What's your thoughts about the approach of going all in in one direction, in this case, all in public cloud, as opposed to a hybrid?
It may be important to really talk about the distinctions in what we mean by public cloud. Are we talking about the public cloud as in platform as a service run in a giant data center by a third party where we're operating remotely? As an example, I think if you look at, Google and AWS and Azure, we're talking less than a dozen major data centers in the continental United States. Or are we talking edges that are operated by them? Well, now we're talking about more of them and they're larger. But there's also the option of separating the platform as a service from the technology that all these companies have invested very heavily in. And I do believe in many cases they are ahead in the features, the automation, the platform sophistication compared to what telcos are custom building. They're, without naming them and getting into, the brand wars, some of these big companies that I think we respect and are talking about will effectively sell you their software to use locally, right? You can run it in your data center, in your edge, in your CEV if you need to. And that is an option. Obviously there are business questions around it. Do the economics make sense? Are you comfortable being dependent on another? But, we've looked at examples of AT&T saying, yeah, I am comfortable being dependent for a number of my workloads on one of the big public cloud providers. The last thing I'll point out is whether there is going to be a hybrid option is not a point of discussion, right? Because, if you get back to, let's look at the practicality of there is a fiber running from my house to the pole, down the street to an aggregation point, right? There have to be workloads along that point. Either it will not be virtualized and cloud will not exist in that area, or, right, they need to be in that path. Or we can put those workloads in the public cloud, and now we need something else, and what, pray tell, is that, to essentially backhaul it to the public cloud. So you're going to have localized workloads, probably not in your data center, right? But you're going to have to deal with the technology. You're going to need to deal with it locally where the bits need to go. But I very much agree with Danielle. We need to take advantage of the best technology. We need to innovate faster. We need to open up and think differently as an industry. On the other hand, we can't give up what we're really good at. And never forget, we've got right-of-way, we've got spectrum, and we've got a reputation for operating networks that work.
Absolutely. Thanks, Grant. We've got a couple more comments on this one. Ahmed, I'll come to you first. What do you make of this point?
Yeah, I think this point is not, we cannot say, okay, shall we put everything on the public cloud or so we can keep also the hybrid? I think also in the public cloud, there is a lot of challenge that telco application are not able to work, let's say, or to need to be adapted in the public cloud. And there is a huge, let's say, work that we need to work together, let's say, to solve all this issue and to be able to put everything and then public cloud. And also the business model is not the same like when you have public cloud instead of, let's say, a private hybrid or private cloud, let's say.
Good points. Thanks, Ahmed. And Fatih, let's get some extra comments on this one from you.
All right. So one thing as ex-Google person that I really don't like about calling public cloud at the public part. You can consume those infrastructures in a private way. It doesn't have to go over internet. That's a misconception. Other thing is, as Ahmed was pointing, some of the telco applications under the whole gigantic application portfolio may go well and may not go well depending on how cloud is designed in the first place for that particular, with respect to the need of the application. There are different clouds, as you will call. One is mainly originated with the DNA of e-commerce retail mindset, with the DNAs of it. And one with the search engine and streaming in the mindset and the DNA of it. And one with the productivity suite in the mindset and DNA of it. So these are separate DNAs. There are some common parts of these DNAs, but they are not 100% equal to each other. So when you're going all in with some telco applications, you got to make sure that DNA that you're targeting with those leased infrastructure that you're leasing, that you're renting, will be good enough to host and accommodate your application needs by means of experience, performance, and scalability, as well as cost. So it's a caution that you need to be taking care while thinking kind of a relational model, dependencies, cost model, availability, accessibility, as well as, you know what, it's not public. You can consume private as well.
Okay, thanks everyone for those comments. We'll move along now. And Heather, we'd already heard in our conversation today about the multi-cloud. So let me just ask you, why partner with just one public cloud company? Why not have multiple relationships and adopt a multi-cloud strategy?
I mean, I think there are a lot of good reasons why you would want to, in terms of, seeing who can give you great performance, being able to place workloads where you want, being able to tailor certain workloads to certain environments. The thing I think that makes it challenging really is interop. And one of the things I've noticed as a common thread through what folks have been saying is that cloud is simple, but there are a huge variety of technologies involved, even let's just say with cloud native. Look at the number of projects in CNCF. And this isn't a knock on them, but if you want to sort of easily move that sort of, moving workloads amongst, your private cloud technologies and different public clouds, you're going to run into, differences, and some of them ought to be abstracted, but aren't in real life. And then some of them start to get very complicated. I was talking with a service provider within the Anakit project of LFN, and he was saying that, they'd gone through their due diligence. They had a great sort of, cloud strategy. And then a new application came in and all of a sudden required service mesh, so layer 4 through 7 networking, when they'd done all this optimization around layer 3 for, kind of their hardcore telco apps. And all of a sudden their cloud choice didn't work because of a need for service mesh. And so I think this idea that cloud can be uniformly consumed without some level of interop thought process, some level of requirements process, and some level of understanding what works for different types of workloads and applications it's PowerPoint level pie in the sky. And it's not actually where the technology comes in, especially when you're doing hardcore networking applications. You need multi-tenancy, you need multiple networking interfaces. That's been a thing that we've been struggling with for some time. It took a while to even get basic IPv6 support into Kubernetes. And, the number of CNI plugins out there is extraordinary. And it's great because because they are tailored for certain applications, but it does mean that interop is not the magically easily solved issue that people like to claim that it is in the cloud world. And that does require some more work, some more standardization, and a lot of interop testing, testing within certain environments and with certain assumptions being put into place is really, really important. So I'll get off my rant now.
It's a good one though, Heather. It's very, very interesting points you've raised there. Danielle, isn't it a case that a lot of applications are designed and more specific to certain clouds using certain cloud tools, and this interoperability issue, it causes issues. Therefore, a multi-cloud strategy may be the right one to take.
Well, I think you need to be really careful with multi-cloud because it depends, right, on the reason why you're doing multi-cloud. Are you doing what Heather was just talking about, where you want to take the same workload and be able to move it seamlessly to another vendor, another cloud? And when you do that, it forces you into technical design decisions that are uniform across clouds. And it takes you away from being able to really design that application deeply for a particular cloud. And so a really easy example is databases, right? All the cloud databases, all the clouds have databases specific to their cloud. DynamoDB, for example, in AWS doesn't exist on the other two clouds. Spanner is a Google thing, Cosmos DB at Azure. And so it just takes that completely out of the equation if you want to move the same workload to multiple clouds. And so why are you doing that, right? Why, are you worried that, vendor lock-in or negotiating leverage? Here I'd say consolidate your spend with one of the cloud vendors, make yourself bigger, and you actually have more negotiating leverage instead of less. I think do it for your team. It is hard to learn about the specific technologies of one cloud, much less two or three. And then, as Heather was just saying, the operational complexity is absolutely there. And so here I'd say try to move the same workload to another region within the same cloud of a particular workload. That's hard. And when you realize just cloud to cloud is difficult, much less across clouds. And so I'd be really careful before you're like, hey, yeah, let's go multi-cloud because more is better, or it stops us from vendor lock-in or whatever else. I think you're opening up a Pandora's box of a lot of problems. And so you need to make sure your team is ready, that you have the money to do it, and you're willing to make maybe even poor technical trade-offs, lowest denominator technical decisions, and not maybe the best one that would get you the most savings or the most efficiency, so that you can move that workloads seamlessly across different clouds. So I would pump the brakes on multi-cloud and really think it through before you decide that that's the right reason to do it.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Well, look, we're going to move on. I'm going to build on this last question with our next one. And Fatih, I'd like to put this to you first. What type of virtualization and orchestration is needed if a hybrid approach, or indeed a multi-cloud approach, or combination thereof, is taken? Can telcos adopt a single pane of glass approach across these different multiple clouds?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So when we look at our journey from physical network functions to virtual network functions and then container network functions, which is kind of a specific terms for network side of things, but the bottom, which is the technology, is kind of pointing this commonality across other workloads as well, which is applications or services directly installed on a bare metal, and then applications and services installed inside a virtual machine and kind of put on top of this physical machine with other VMs, and then sitting on top of a hypervisor. And then the third stop, which is the last stop where we are right now, which is the containers. Okay, let's small the footprint of those VMs into really necessary ones in process level, in application level, so we can migrate and make it more portable across different infrastructures thanks to Docker containerization, right? So where we are right now, heavily with the cloud approaches, we have all these three. So all the cloud vendors offers both bare metal as well as virtual machines, as well as container-based application deployments and I would say accommodation. Okay, So the question which you asked, the virtualization and orchestration technology. So we talked about virtualization. The orchestration part, bare metal application usually installed and maintained whoever supplying those applications and services through their OSS BSS portfolio in past and still. Virtual machines, we can heavily talk about VMware solution. We can talk about the OpenStack, which has been a really big hit, especially inside Telco. And last stop, the third stop where we are in the recent times is mainly around orchestrating the containerized applications, which is de facto, as everybody accepts, is the Kubernetes. Okay, so those are the virtualization as well as orchestration that is embedded into these platforms as hosting these applications. However, these platforms, including Kubernetes, OpenStack, yet still need an upper level umbrella orchestration to oversee multiple locations, multiple clusters, multiple geographies, and see where it is needed to expand the application for scale up and down, as well as deploy new clusters. So we need upper level orchestration where there has been a couple of good CNCF Linux Foundation backed projects, but unfortunately, it has been overblown with too many requirements, and making that list so long made them really not delivering good enough and mature enough solutions. Yet we are in the market now going a little bit, I would say, cautiously. Okay, let's focus on how we can manage multiple clusters. And Google has one solution. AWS has one solution specific to them. Azure has one solution specific to them. And there's an open source project which is called Open Cluster Management that foresees all these different infrastructures as well as different way of doing things, addressing the containers as well as VMs underneath. Back to Danielle's point, which I agree and disagree, is data locality and data gravity is a reality. Wherever you put your data intensive applications has to be very close to it to get benefit of latency as well as not to pay for egress charges out of those clouds. However, those databases, data warehouses, data lakes, whatever you want to call it, have common interfaces, say SQL or Verse. They have defined APIs to be consumed by external parties that enables the applications sitting on other clouds or on-premise to reach those data lakes and data warehouses performing queries. However, it comes with a cost of egress charges from those cloud vendors because cloud vendors don't want those applications to escape to other infrastructures. They want those applications consuming CPU and memory and storage in their premise, on their infrastructure where the data is. That's why we have this problem of network egress charges now, which is becoming a really bottleneck to implement multi-cloud solutions and strategies. Thank you.
No, thank you, Fatih. It's a great overview and explanation there of what is a very complex situation and scenario. Heather, let me come across to you there. You know, getting to the initial question here, that Fatih has articulated and shown us how complex this is, and you've also already spoken about the interconnect issues. You know, is it possible for an operator to use a single pane of glass approach here and have oversight and orchestration across all these different clouds?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think, we've had projects that have been working towards that vision. I mean, ONAP, for example, or MCO, which is another orchestration project we have in LFN, are sitting above that sort of cluster management, that Kubernetes sort of concept, leveraging it, not building a new version of it, but putting it into the sort of application related concepts, and then doing all of that OSS, BSS, back office integration. And, and I think that's always going to be a thing that's true for telecom. And so, building that sort of, consistency, single pane of glass, as you say, at perhaps a level above that has the application logic and the business logic really tuned, for the services that you're offering and for being a telecom service provider, I think is something that, we've had a lot of projects that have worked very well with OpenStack, very well with Kubernetes, using the technology capabilities that come natively with them, but then being a little bit more vertically specific or programmably vertically specific to make sure that the layer 7 type knowledge is really accounted for, but it is, disambiguated, from what's going on at the infrastructure or platform as a service layer. So, I mean, you're never going to quite reach nirvana, but you really can continue to work on it and make something that's very useful that telecoms are getting value from.
We can strive towards it. Yeah, thanks very much, Heather. I think we've probably got time to squeeze in one final sort of summary question here, which I'd like to ask. And Grant, perhaps I could come to you first with this one. Where is the telco community in its hybrid cloud journey? Are you picking up on any lessons that have been learned so far? Any models or use cases that are looking better than others?
I'd like to answer that in a couple of different ways. The first thing, getting back to Fatih's great comment, we need to separate IT workloads from network cloud workloads, right? And how they're evolving. And the IT workloads, I think they're beginning to mature on their evolution to public cloud. Network cloud workloads, less so, for a number of reasons. Conservatism, readiness of some of the public clouds to explicitly support some acceleration and high availability and location-specific needs as well. But if we really want to look at the journey of the telcos, I think we need to back up and ask not how are they on their journey to public cloud, but a step farther back, how are they on their journey to cloud native? And I've been watching this very, very carefully. We put a couple of hundred pages out back in 2016 because I have a background in control theory and a background that goes before control theory to negative feedback for the really gray-haired geeks like me out there. But one of the things is to look at control theory, you need to believe that simple is elegant. You need to believe that you can not control all of the details. You are going to trust the process, trust the machine. Whether it's the Google location controller or whether it's Azure ARM or whether it's your, any of the placement controllers that you have, you've got to trust them. You've got to trust them to look at the intended state, that confused word intent, and where you are and nudge things back in place. Honestly, the public cloud was way ahead of telco. Up through maybe a couple of years ago. Telco went through virtualization where we put things on fat VMs and said, great, it looks just like it did before, only it's running in a VM. And then we slowly moved to cloud native, which is absolutely critical and requires that trusting of the machine. We just did a huge research report on a survey of the orchestration state of the art. And it was fascinating to me how far most of the vendors' understanding of cloud native, of intent, of fully automated control loops, and letting the machine operate had come in the last 18 months. I think that's critical to moving to public cloud. If you can't trust that a machine can give you high availability and can scale horizontally quickly and do the things you need, you're never going to trust the public cloud. So I believe we actually are at a very critical decision point where telcos are ready to embrace it, certainly for IT workloads, possibly for a number of network workloads outside of the actual user plane itself, where they believe they can get innovation speed, lower cost, better automation, all sorts of things. And, we're beginning to even see some very large players, the ones that would otherwise have the engineering resources to do it themselves, whether it's a good idea or not, tumbling over and saying, yeah, we are going to work with Google and Azure and AWS. We're going to work with them in Edge and even for large workloads in large data centers. So we have observed that. I think one final thing, and then I would want to leave time for others. is that the shift of enterprises to public cloud has forced the telecom industry, if they want to grow with their enterprise clients, which are large and profitable, to figure out how they are going to start dealing with workloads that are in the public cloud that used to be locked in the basement of enterprises with their WAN networking and SD-WAN networking. They're fundamentally being asked to flexibly orchestrate from a LAN through the WAN into the public cloud. And as that gets rearranged, as business relationships change, they need to change with it. And that's, I think, forcing them to start thinking that abstraction, APIs, dealing with third parties is not as scary as it may first have looked. Love to hear what some of my in the telco colleagues feel about that. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant. Making progress. We always like to hear that. Danielle first. It does seem that we're at this exciting transition point, and then it's all to play for telcos.
You know, we just came out of a great MWC 22, and then just what's been going on in the world with telco executives. You know, they're like, it's not fair. You know, the public clouds use our infrastructure, our network to run their business. Give us money and help us fund it. It's not fair. iPhone came along and totally changed the playing field, and voice was eradicated basically, and the world was changed to data. You know, the metaverse is coming, as much as that's a big buzzword, right? When is telco going to be ready? When are we going to decide it's time to change and pivot quickly? We have this amazing opportunity with technology that works, that runs businesses bigger than the individual telcos, that use this technology to run their business and grow their revenue at alarming rates. When is telco going to decide, now I'm going to change so I can compete in this world? Or am I going to be relegated to being a dumb pipe? I hate that answer. And, you know, yesterday I was posting on LinkedIn and people are like, yeah, we're just dumb pipes. That's just what we're going to be. We can't innovate. This is an amazing opportunity to take advantage of battle tested at an internet planetary scale technology. It works. You have to trust the machine. You have to get rid of managing the plumbing, focus on your network, focus on your customers, and go fight for your business and fight for your subscribers. And so, you know, this careful planning and slow going, it's over, right? I mean, you have the luxury, and I'm going to say it, the luxury of being regulated, right? Because it protects your business within your countries. Use it to your advantage, but you got to start innovating. You got to start moving more quickly. And I'm going to say it, it's a culture change, right? And so let's go. Like, go fight for your business and go fight for your subscribers. And you're going to have to move fast. You're going to have to break some things. Go do it.
Go do it. Thank you, Danielle. And Fatih, let's come across to you for some final comments from you.
Yeah, so one thing I would like to highlight, maybe point to the fact that if you're following the quarterly results, how they're kind of put into a meaning by Wall Street for FANG, is mainly, you know, you may notice that, so Amazon numbers or say Netflix numbers or Apple numbers, despite it's much better than last year, but their stock went down. And this is due to the fact that Wall Street is not necessarily looking at the how much more you're making, how many more subscribers or how many much more customers you have. They're looking at the DAUs and MAUs, which is daily active user, monthly active user, meaning how your customer base is actively engaged with you, how much that shows how much they are consuming, and also that gives insights into how much they will consume in the coming days and months and years. So MAUs and DAUs are becoming a success measurement for TME as well, Telco Media Entertainment. In that sense, the executives in the TMEs are looking, okay, since no longer not number of subscribers we have, number of phones we sold, it's about how much we are actively engaged with our customers and how much they're consuming our services daily and monthly is a critical key success factor for them. Okay, so if that's the reality, if you have to be proactive and make everything your consumer base or enterprise base is consuming your services actively, not necessarily that you have them in the pocket, but they're not consuming anything. It means they're not spending money on you. You have to embrace hybrid multi-cloud journey to leverage, as we talked before, the strength of these clouds with the software as a service layer, PaaS as a layer, guess what? Yes, TME has SLAs, needs SLAs. TME needs regulations. Then you got to pick a partner that will abstract those complexity for you, and yet you're still consuming multi-cloud as an infrastructure. I think that's the key thing we're going to see. Now Apple One subscription becoming a reality, and we are seeing that most bundled subscriptions will going to come in this domain for media and entertainment and heading to telecommunications as well. And that will, I think, eventually, sooner or later, will drag TME approaches into hybrid multi-cloud journey with better engagement models, better distributed services with less cost.
Oh, that's interesting, Fatih. Thank you very much indeed for those comments. Well, look, we must end our discussion there. Thank you all very much for taking part in the programme today and sharing all your views. And if you're watching this on day 2 of our summit on telcos and public cloud, then please send us your questions, because we're going to try and answer them in our live after show program, and that's later today. And do take part in our online poll, which you can find below this video player window next to the Q&A app. This is the question we are asking, along with the 5 multiple choice answers, and we'll review the votes during the after show. Don't forget to take a look at the other panel discussions and keynote interviews in this year's summit. For now, though, thank you for watching and goodbye.
The quality of discussion has been a really impressive level, and I hope you do it next year, and if you are, count me in.